Hello, and welcome to this special recorded event, Decision 2024, Your Voices, Your Future. My name is Tom Guevara. I'm director of the IU Public Policy Institute, and I'll be your host as we hear from the three candidates vying to be elected as Indiana's next governor. It's an incredible honor to moderate such a critical discussion about the future of our state. Much of the work and thanks go to the staff of the IU Public Policy Institute and the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs for making this event possible. This is the fourth time our institute, which is part of the Paul H. O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs, has hosted this forum, and I am pleased to participate in the conversation. I also would like to thank the Herron School of Art and Design for allowing us to record this forum in their beautiful school. I'm here because I'm a Hoosier who wants to see Indiana thrive in every way possible. In fact, all three of our guests share this desire for our state. I would like to thank our candidates, former Indiana Superintendent of Public Instruction, Dr. Jennifer McCormick, U.S. Senator Mike Braun, and Mr. Donald Rainwater for their participation and ideas. Many critical questions and issues will be raised during my discussion with the candidates. Public discourse is one of America's most proud traditions, and I am so pleased that you are joining us to hear from our candidates. Each candidate will be with me individually for approximately 1/2 hour without the usual trappings of partisan elections. This is not a debate, but rather a discussion about their vision for our state. Earlier this year, the Public Policy Institute embarked on a process of drafting a series of policy briefs that cover critical topics that impact Hoosiers on a daily basis. I will be speaking with the candidates on a number of these important issues, including but not limited to childcare and healthcare, workforce development, innovation and technology, and community resiliency. I'll be asking questions that have been derived from this work, with the advice of faculty members and students at the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs in Indianapolis and Bloomington, as well as expert authors who have collaborated with us. With the 24-hour news cycle and social media at everyone's fingertips, it can be easy to focus on headlines and not substance. This forum is designed to be different. The goal will be to proceed in a conversational tone with the spirit of open inquiry, in keeping with the mission of the Public Policy Institute. We will hear from the next governor of Indiana on important issues that we all hear about regularly and the Policy Institute studies every day. I look forward to a spirited discussion about the future of our state, and I appreciate you being here to be part of the conversation. I'm pleased to welcome the Democratic nominee for Governor of Indiana and former Superintendent of Public Instruction, Dr. Jennifer McCormick. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
During the last 3 years, the Gallup organization has reported a large decrease in the public's confidence in our most important federal government institutions. While Indiana state government may not face quite the same loss of confidence as federal institutions, it also is likely not immune to it. What do you think can be done to raise Hoosiers' confidence that our state government can effectively address their needs?
Yeah, so as I travel across the state, I hear it a lot more than people probably would assume I would hear it. And a lot of data we see shows that 60% of Hoosiers don't like the direction in which the state is going, and a lot of that is because of their loss of trust. So our concern is when you have one party rule for so long that no one's real great at policing themselves, and there's really not a reason to do that or an appetite to do that. So we released the McCormick-Gooden Common Sense Ethics Plan, where it was our promise to Hoosiers to deliver a government that is transparent, held accountable, that we put 6 different mechanisms in place that would establish ways in which the government would be responsible and be a good government. So that governing body, just bringing back that confidence, was important for us. You know, when I was state superintendent, I took that very seriously. I mean, I was elected by the people, I was serving the people, and so we held the Department of Education to really high standards, and we were very proud of that. And I intend to do the same thing once elected. I am hopeful that our General Assembly would pick up on a lot of our ethics plan, because some of that would need their help. But it's really hard, I would think, as General Assembly members to say, no, we don't want to be held to high standards, because that's what it's going to take to bring back that trust, and we're going to work really hard to do that.
Economic research shows small and new businesses create most new jobs. In 2022, the Indiana Community Action Poverty Institute found low-wage jobs dominate in rural areas. Although not a universal solution, entrepreneurship can lead to more jobs, lower income inequality, and build wealthier communities. What policies or programs can we implement or support to help Hoosiers who want to start a business?
Yeah, so the fastest growing jobs in Indiana require less than a high school diploma. And that is not sustainable for a state that wants a strong economy, and we want to keep our most talented workforce here. We want to have folks start families in our state and stay here as retirees. So that's not sustainable. So making sure that we're taking care of small business, which is our engine, and I would also say there are a lot of great grant programs that are working. Those that are working, maintain those and build upon those. Those that are not, or that are not in existence, that's where we need to bring those small businesses to the table to make sure we're asking them, what are your needs? What are the resources you need? What are those mentorship programs? What are the startup grants that you need? What are those tax incentives that we could do? And we have some of that in place, but not to the degree I feel like it is that we need. So when I left the state superintendent, I started my own business. And I tell you, no one really gives you this is how you do it. And so I sought out a lot of opinions and a lot of help, but we got to make it easier than that for folks who want to start a small business and be successful, and not just the startup, but maintaining it. I was thrilled to hear the Harris Walls team come out and say that they were going to offer huge tax incentives to people who are wanting to start small businesses. And I think that's a good thing, but as a state, we can do the same and also be good partners with a lot of people who I think really are ready to move the needle, not just for all small business, but also an emphasis on women and minorities with small businesses.
Evidence shows that technological innovation elevates wages and incomes and our overall standard of living. Indiana has a large manufacturing industry that employs about 20% of our state's workforce, but innovation and technological advancement in manufacturing is lagging, particularly in rural areas. What can we do to increase opportunities for Hoosiers to work with artificial intelligence and in tech-intensive advanced manufacturing?
Yeah, so we're very fortunate to have the manufacturing in Indiana, and we got to maintain that and grow that. But you need an educated and healthy workforce, and we need an educated and healthy consumer, and we have to have that talent base be what it needs to be. So that means that starts really early. So that starts in childcare, it starts in universal pre-K, K-12, and post-high school. Right now, Indiana is putting forth a plan that would really put into question the talent that we would have to pull from. When you're saying get an 8th grade education and you're good to fill those, less than high school diploma jobs, that is just really a pathway to poverty for many of our Hoosiers. So we push the rigor. We push a really great academic piece of it. That's my background. We're over half of the state budget. But we need to make sure that we have an educated and talented workforce. On the other end of that, things are moving with artificial intelligence, and I think there's so much opportunity there. Now, will there be struggles? Absolutely. Will there be barriers? Absolutely. But we have great institutions, we have great partners who can walk us through those struggles, those opportunities, and educate folks on how to best take advantage of that and prevent some of the barriers, but also too, doing a better job of what's that return on investment, because the opportunity is there in so many different pockets. So we just need to make sure that we have that educated and healthy workforce, but also embrace the technologies that's there and go after, again, a lot of that takes dollars. I know IEDC has put forth some grants in that space, and continue what's working and build upon those which are working, but it's the future, and Indiana needs to embrace it to move forward.
Indiana's maternal and infant mortality rate has exceeded the national average since at least the 1990s. For every 1,000 births in 2022, 7 infants died before their first birthday, putting Indiana at the 7th highest position for infant mortality in the nation. Rural Hoosiers and Hoosiers of color, in particular, experience inadequate maternal and infant health care due to a lack of physicians, hospitals, and specialty services. How can we improve Indiana's maternal and infant health outcomes while also reducing racial and geographic disparities?
So we have to have a great healthcare system, and we are fortunate to have some of that in place. The expense of it and the access is a huge concern because we've developed, and this is no secret, a monopoly in our healthcare system. So the competitive, more rural areas, clinic type of feelings, those have all closed down. Many of them have. In some of our rural areas are areas where our brown and our black, a lot of brown and black Hoosiers live. And so in some of those communities, they don't have access to quality care. A third of our counties do not have an OBGYN, and that plays right into those statistics that you just shared and is a direct feeder into that problem. We also must embrace aggressive programs and education to help families plan and help get the resources they want to prevent unwanted pregnancies or to assist if you're with family planning. And so there's a whole lot of layers to that, but as a state, we also have to quit beating up our physicians and putting them in really horrible situations where they're not sure what they can practice and what they can't practice, and are there going to be legal ramifications? And it really does not incentivize the most talented to come to Indiana or to stay in Indiana, so we're feeling that. We certainly have a shortage in that space across the board, but that goes back to we need to have the most talented individuals stay in Indiana, and we want them to work here and be part of our communities. The other piece of that for our infants is we have 25% of our counties that do not have pediatricians. And the scary part of that is when I go into communities, sometimes I hear like, what's a pediatrician or what is an OBGYN? And if you don't know what those are, you've never been to those or you've never had the opportunity to take advantage of those. So it's access, it's making sure that it's affordable, it's making sure that we have the transportation in place to get people where they need to go for that health care, and making sure they're educated on what is out there and what's available and how do we get it to Hoosiers. It is a huge problem at a time where we're one of the third highest cost in health care, and how do we get those costs down but also increase access for all Hoosiers?
So let's turn to housing. Indiana has a deficit of nearly 140,000 affordable and available rental homes, with only 34 units available for every 100 of the lowest income households, the second lowest rate in the Midwest. Additionally, in the last year alone, Indiana had nearly 71,000 eviction filings, nearly 1 in 10 Hoosier renter households. What investments are needed, and as governor, what strategies would you employ to make housing more affordable in our state?
Yeah, well, in Indiana, in particular Indianapolis, has one of the poorest renter protection policies and practices in the nation. And that doesn't happen overnight. So working with our local levels to hold folks accountable, but also what can we do from the state lens to work with our local leaders to make sure our renters are protected. We also know too, there needs to be an incentive to build and to construct affordable housing. And I come from Henry County, and I was just talking to a builder not too long ago, and they were so excited to come to Henry County, and there's a lot of poverty in Henry County, and they were telling me they were building affordable housing, which we need and we welcome. And I said, where is it? And when they explained it to me, it was in a housing area that I'm like, I'm not sure that's affordable. And I said, what do you deem affordable? How are you defining affordability? And it was around 350,000. And I said, I'm not sure that's affordable, but walk me through that. So making sure we're talking about apples to apples and making sure we're taking care of those folks who need that housing, making sure we have fair lending practices and incentives to get people into homes that want to get into homes. I mean, there's just a whole lot that needs to be addressed, but we cannot do it alone at the State House. We need to have our local partners. We also need to look at other states that they have. It's a national issue, but there are some states that are seeing some movement with some great programs that let's steal from some of those great programs, their ideas, and let's build upon those, and things that maybe they've tried that didn't work, let's stay away from that, or maybe we need to tweak that. But this is definitely a space as we travel that we need to make sure that we are addressing. The other thing that I want to mention in our property tax relief plan, part of that was to keep people in their homes that are trying to stay in their homes, whether it's poverty or whether it's our senior citizens who are on fixed incomes. So having some of those tax breaks to free up some of those dollars to address some of that property tax issue is huge. So there's common sense ways to approach it, and we're willing to do that, but we can't do it alone from the governor's office, and we would need partnerships.
According to the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority Housing Dashboard, the homeownership rate for Black Hoosiers was 38% in 2022, compared to 75% for white Hoosiers. Black Hoosiers have been the only racial group to experience a decline in their homeownership rate since 2012, due, in part, to past discriminatory practices and policies. As governor, what steps would you take to increase homeownership opportunities, especially for Black Hoosiers?
Well, first is to address those policies. It doesn't happen by itself, and it's allowed to continue, and that's a policy issue. So again, some of it's at the state level, some of it's at the local level, and so addressing that where it is, we address it as an issue, and we don't shy away from having that discussion, but something has to happen, and that means a change of leadership. We're not going to change minds. We have to change the leaders. And so for us, it's about bringing common sense solutions, but that first step is to review the policies, address the policies, and work with, there are a lot of partners right now who are trying to do great work in that space, but we need to bring them to the table, and not just say we're bringing them to the table during a campaign, but bringing them actually to the table and throughout a term while you're in office, so that they're continually a voice. I wouldn't say that discriminatory practice is only happening in the housing piece of it, though. We see it in education, we see it in healthcare, and so let's have that discussion as a state. And I know it's a difficult discussion, but it is past overdue.
So let's talk a little bit about childcare. The first 5 years of a child's life are critical for brain development of our young Hoosiers. Research shows that access to affordable, quality childcare can enable more people to work. To set the stage for Hoosier children's future educational success, how should families' access to high-quality care and learning opportunities be expanded?
Yeah, it is critical for our workforce, to just the family dynamics, to the success of the child coming into school with school readiness. I mean, there's so many layers of what an amazing investment. And I know in Indiana we shy away from it because of the expense, but study after study has proven that you get that money back in fourfold. And so we have got to approach that differently as far as what an amazing investment. COVID did not help in this space. So right now we still have a third of our counties that do not have access to affordable, quality childcare, and that is unacceptable. We are in 2024, unacceptable. We're getting ready to turn over into 2025, and we still have so many of our families, even if they want to work, they don't have a safe place to take their children, or they can't afford it. It's cheaper to stay home than to go get a job because our wages aren't moving. And so there's a lot of pieces to that need to be addressed, and you have to have good, educated, specialized workers in that space. So dealing with a 3-year-old is different than when I taught 12-year-olds. It's just different. And so making sure that we are incentivizing programs to develop that workforce that would take care of our child care. The other piece of that is, we still don't have universal pre-K that fits right in that space of that 0 to 5, and it's so incredibly important. We have kids coming into kindergarten, because remember, Indiana doesn't require kindergarten until they're 7. So we have kids coming into kindergarten in many of our districts that don't know colors from shapes, from numbers. I know I was in an affluent district in between Anderson University and Ball State University as a local superintendent. In kindergarten roundup, we'd have kids come in and they would not be potty trained, and so we're ready for kindergarten, and we're expecting kids to, 2 kids that need potty trained in a classroom of 25, and you're moving on to the academic piece of it. So there is a huge need for it. The other piece I don't think we're talking about is that 0 to 3 language development. In the state of Indiana, we've got a long way to go for that 0 to 3 development as far as expressive language. Are they able to express appropriately, which I know at that age that's different, but it is still expressive language. And then receptive language. Are they being read to? Are they being talked to? And if you watch, go to a grocery store, go to a restaurant, parents are on their cell phone, or they hand the cell phone to their infant, or the iPad, and it's that language barrier that we're seeing. And we're not alone, but where is that discussion? Because we can spend a ton of money on lots of great programs in K-12, but if we don't take care of the readiness space in 0-5, like other states are doing, we're going to be lagging. So let's be smart about it and invest with our tax dollars where they need to be invested, so we're saving on the other end. We have a stronger workforce, we have better school readiness, we have a better economy with people being able to work. There's so many benefits to it.
As in the rest of the country, Hoosiers are experiencing the ever larger effects of a changing climate, including more extreme and frequent weather events. Multiple surveys have found that most Hoosiers, regardless of political party, support policies that help address climate change and do more to develop alternative energy sources. What policies do you think are needed to address climate change?
Yeah, there's a whole lot that we haven't done in Indiana that needs to be done. And these aren't radical, these are very common sense. We are one of 11 states that's not a part of the Climate Alliance. That is bipartisan with governors. So day one, do our homework and how do we become a member of the Climate Alliance? Because we're not in isolation. So we need to do this in partnership with our neighboring states and the world. So Climate Alliance would be the first thing. The other piece of that is right now we're at a huge time where our water is at risk, our soil's being compromised. You know, our air, I come from a 5th generation farm family. My dad was a soil water conservationist. My husband was in water quality before he became a science teacher. I mean, there's a whole lot of layers to what we need to take care of, but we still don't have a water management plan. And I bring that up because it's all interconnected. We need to take care of that because of our, you know, our wetlands that are very, very connected to our concerns with what's happening with our climate. And we have wiped those pretty much away in the state of Indiana. Very, very, very nearsighted. So long term, we need to have a plan. We need to protect our natural resources. We need to make sure we're part of Climate Alliance. We need to make sure we're transitioning to greener, smarter energy, which I think there's a big appetite for. We just have to have those incentives, whether it's dollars or whether the private partnership is there, that there are a lot of people willing to go, but you have to have leaders who also embrace that and understand that. A perfect example I can give you is, again, when I was in charge of half of the state budget at the Department of Education, we worked closely with Purdue University on their Climate Research Center, and we brought tons of resources for K-12 so that people would be educated, including those who were trying to teach about it and then the kids in which we were trying to teach. And we had great response from that. And once we left office, all that came down. And we had people reach out and say, where did that go? We were using it to teach kids about the power of, you know, being smart with our energy and, you know, water usage and the wetlands. And, you know, that's just a reflection of you either are trying to solve and be a part of the solution or you're trying to run away from it. And in this time, we're done with that. We have to change the leaders.
According to federal reporting, only 37% of all Indiana schools met or exceeded expectations during the 2022-2023 academic year. Recent state assessments also revealed that only 30% of students were proficient in math and English language arts. What should we do to improve equitable education outcomes for students across the state?
Yeah, my first question would be on the assessment piece. I think when we're hanging our hat on assessments and percentages of pass, not passing, those who took it, those who did not, attendance, you know, all the percentages we're hanging our hat on, that we're not comparing apples to oranges. So Indiana is really good about changing our assessment every few years. So we have standards set, we continue to change those, then we continue to change the assessment. So we don't have good trend data. We don't have good trend data at the individual level. We don't have good on the student. We don't have good trend data as a school or as a state. So our charge when we were in the office said, quit, change it, pick one and stick to it so we really know that trend data. At the local level, the schools have done that. So we're really assessing heavily because we have more faith in continuing to have that trend data. At the state level, there's such pressure and an appetite to continue to change that at the tune of $40 to $60 million every time we do it, but it also causes confusion. It makes public schools look bad, and my charge is at the end of the day, I mean, I think sometimes that checks a box for them, but it's unfortunate because we know we have room to grow in K-12. We know we need to increase our writing skills, our literacy, we need to increase our math skills, basic computation is a huge concern. We know where those concerns lie. We need good data to make informed decisions. Then we also need research-based instructional programs and approaches that are well received and well spread across the state of Indiana. We have also not done a good job with that because too many times we are controlled on what can be done based on a national organization from here has given us a lot of money in the state of Indiana to be the the experimental state, and we've jumped all over that. So our kids have been an experiment for 20 years, and it is time to get back to what works, what's research-based, what assessments are reliable and valid. I mean, we're not asking for the moon here. We're asking for just best practices, but it is concerning. But I feel like we really don't know where our kids are performing because we keep changing the assessment and the bar, and the standards in which they're assessed. Sometimes too, those standards that we're teaching aren't aligned to the assessment, and so that also becomes a problem.
Nearly 1 in 12 Hoosiers meet the criteria for having a substance use disorder. Access to early intervention and treatment services not only saves lives, but also reduces the economic impact of addiction on the individual and the community. What can your administration do to ensure those individuals have continued access to necessary recovery and treatment services?
Yeah, I have to give credit where credit's due on this one. Governor Holcomb, I was a member of the governor's workforce cabinet, and they did talk about substance abuse a lot, and they were trying to develop some programs to better serve Hoosiers. So I want to make sure that credit's given, and where those programs are working, let's keep those working and expand upon those. Where they're not working and where they're not reaching, we need to reach. So access is huge. Having the care providers that we need, which I know they struggled with as well, enticing people to come into our state or stay in our state, making sure that pipeline of caregivers in that area is where it needs to be. It's super expensive. I believe in the last 15 years, we've spent about $46 billion on just the substance abuse piece of it. And so we obviously need to make sure we're being smart about the commissions and the boards that we bring to the table to have those discussions. What are the gaps in care? I'm also very concerned about what I've learned about those who are incarcerated, and once they get released into communities, that reentry is difficult for many of them, and that is a huge chunk of some of the areas that we're seeing a lot of problems. We need a strong workforce, but we need healthy Hoosiers as well, and all that gets tied together. And substance abuse, it's just really been a huge crisis in the state of Indiana, and so making sure we're being good partners, bringing the right people to the table, putting the resources in that we need. But again, you can't do that in isolation because there are a lot of individual pockets of programs going on out in Indiana. And let's build upon what's working and let's fix what's not working. The mental health space of all that is very concerning. We're high in suicide attempts. We're high in actual suicides. As a local superintendent, as an educator, I dealt with that in the kids space or in their families, and it's horrible. And Indiana's been top 5 worst for some time now. And so we need to put the resources where they need to be and have a conversation. I know we shy away from that at the General Assembly because I've been in those conversations, but it's time we move into those conversations and put the resources where we need them.
Indianapolis has the 5th highest imprisonment rate in the nation for Black men born to low-income families. Researchers have found that racial disparities in the Indianapolis criminal justice system are a leading cause. What should be the top priority in addressing racial disparities in the Indiana justice system, and what will your administration do to implement policies to reduce them?
Yeah, first it's having a good handle on not just Indianapolis, but the state of Indiana. It's also making sure that we are appointing people that play a huge role in that are competent, that have character, and who are committed to that public service. One of those would be the Indiana State Police Superintendent, who has a huge role in this. And then working with our local officials that also have a huge role in this. So it is a problem. There are a lot of great programs like the Second Solution programs where you're reviewing those sentences and seeing if those longer sentences could then be, taken down. It's a matter of looking at the biases within the programs and do we see trends in that? And so there's a lot that can be done, but you also, again, it goes back to a state that is willing to have honest conversations at the table and then address it appropriately. So there's a lot of work to be done, but it's going to take, again, state and local and also federal to see what programs out there that are doing a good job in other states as well and learn from those.
Good. Well, let's wrap up with one last question about young voter engagement. Indiana is historically among the bottom states in voter participation, particularly for young voters. Has your campaign engaged young voters during this election cycle, and what can be done to increase voting in our elections?
We have. It's not easy, so I'm not going to sit and pretend it is easy. We are 50 out of 50th on voter turnout, so we even have those who are registered that just don't go vote. Part of that is, I believe, when you have a supermajority for as long as we've had it, a lot of people are like, what's the point? We're very gerrymandered, so then I hear people in communities say, what's the point? Sometimes there's no one to vote for on the ballot in their political affiliations, so again, what's the point? And so too many of those end up that we're 50 out of 50th. We've also made it very difficult at the State House, where they continue to make it harder and harder to vote. And we just went through that the last session with transportation. So we can't get any further down, but it's still a huge problem. But the young voters are hard to reach, and many of them are exhausted by what they see in politics. They do not like the extremism. They do not like the divisiveness. They do not like the lack of willingness to be bipartisan. They don't like it. And so they're telling us, like, we don't want any part of that because we don't like it. And so we've tried to reach them through mechanisms, whether it's their social media platforms such as TikTok, which we're doing the right way, but that's been a huge reach for us. Finding leaders, young leaders that have a reach and are influencers has been empowering for us. Getting people to have their own mini campaigns for us has been very impactful in that age, but also giving them a reason of how this impacts your life. I mean, we tell them it's the choice is clear. I mean, do you want your own family planning and control over your body, or do you want the government to do that for you? I mean, the choice is clear, and especially the birth control conversation gets a lot of young kids coming up for air when I'm like, the bill's written, do you want to save your birth control or not? You know, that's always interesting. The cost of housing, their cost of education, they're like, I'll never be able to afford a house. And I'm like, that is your vote. You know, or I hear, you know, that my education, I'm in debt forever. That is your vote. And so having conversations with them, getting into their communities, but also just reminding them of why that importance is there, and that if we don't exercise that right to vote, we could likely lose that right to vote. And so I know sometimes it seems so, you know, just so absent from what they're thinking about, but, you know, trying to make those connections. And I love talking to our young people. I mean, part of that is my background, but I also learn so much from them as far as what that generation and their generations are feeling and the responsibility to that. So we're working hard in that space, but it's not easy. So I'm not going to sit and say we've figured it all out, but they're phone banking for us, they're door knocking for us, they're giving me $5 when they can and $20 when they can, which I am very humbled by. But, you know, we continue to work with them to say what works, what doesn't work, and get into that space. You know, universities are huge. So we've been talking to folks on the university campuses, but also getting into neighborhoods where kids have a lot to say, young people have a lot to say, so we need to be good listeners.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and
Thank
we
you.
certainly wish you the best of luck with the rest of your campaign.
Thank you. I so appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you for joining us for these important discussions with the candidates for Indiana's governor. One of them will be elected to lead our state for the next 4 years, and it is my hope that these conversations will help inform your decision this November. To the candidates, Dr. McCormick, Senator Braun, and Mr. Rainwater, we wish you the best of luck and thank you for joining us. A special thanks to the Heron School of Art and Design at IU Indianapolis, and especially the school's dean, Greg Hall, for their gracious accommodations and support. A special thanks also goes to the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs, whose students, faculty, staff, and alumni continue to make this forum an important event during the fall gubernatorial campaign cycle. And to the incredibly hardworking staff of the IU Public Policy Institute and our O'Neill Marketing and Communications team. You can learn more about the policy briefs used to inform our discussions at policyinstitute.iu.edu. If you have not registered to vote, the deadline to do so in Indiana is Monday, October 7th. Election day is Tuesday, November 5th. No matter for whom you cast your ballot, please exercise your right to vote. Once again, thank you for joining us.